Good afternoon and welcome to this September 14th work session. The purpose of this meeting is to present departmental and agency presentations for the FY 23-24 biennial budget cycle. I'm going to turn things over now to our county manager, Dr. Jackie McMorris.
Thank you, Chairwoman and Commissioners. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to present. Thank you for giving us grace last meeting when it went longer and we weren't able to start them. So today we're hoping to get back on schedule. So I just want to lay the foundation for the impetus for the presentations to begin with, right? So again, a while back we were asked to bring to you what we think our personnel, operating, and capital costs will be for your consideration during the FY 23-24 biennial. And so what our finance director shared with you all is that we have so many departments, to include our judicial system employees, constitutional officers, elected offices, not to mention the BOC offices, that it's going to take about 6 months, give or take, to get through everybody, or at least a while. So we wanted to go ahead and start as early as possible to start providing you all with those updates. So as context, you all are aware that we're in the process of a county-wide strategic plan. We're working on a comp and class study, while in the midst of continuing to battle recruitment and retention, not only on the sworn side, but on the non-sworn side. So as leaders, you're aware as well that we're constantly faced with challenges, which we like to perceive as opportunities. But there comes a time when we can't drag our feet too long. We can't make assessments stretch out too long. We have to change, reevaluate our situation, and sometimes pivot and change again. The key, though, for us is to learn how to continually make what's known today as leader shifts. Leader shifting, according to John Maxwell, is the ability and willingness to make a leadership change that will positively enhance organizational and personal growth. We must adapt. We have no choice but to shift. We cannot be the same, think the same, and act the same if we hope to be successful in a world, even a county, that does not remain the same. What I'm saying to you is that we're no longer the same Cobb County as we were even 5 years ago or a decade ago. Leader shifting then propels us forward in the face of our natural tendency and temptation to be mentally rigid. It prompts us to become more innovative and to get out of our comfort zones, question conventional wisdom, and welcome change. Therefore, though we value our accomplishments of yesterday, live and work vigorously in the today, we must think about and lead intentionally for tomorrow. We must move forward courageously in the midst of uncertainty, for life and growth expand or shrink in proportion of our courage. Consequently, as you listen to and ask key questions about the presentations that will be before you for the next several months, between now and perhaps late January, early February, I ask you to think about the kind of Cobb County government you want to build upon. Do we want to be leaders willing to make the shifts needed to propel us forward? I say you do. So today, I want to just give you a little bit of context of what's to come. So as I mentioned before, we were asked to share with you what our needs are, our critical needs are in areas of personnel, operating, and our capital. Context: the board requested an opportunity to hear about budget needs for the next biennial. We realize that you've just come out of adopting the existing budget. We realize that the numbers may be daunting, the presentations may be long, but we ask for your attention as we go through these. We will provide you copies of our presentation afterwards, for there may be questions that you have that we need to go back and address. So before you on the screen, you will see our presentations. but you don't have hard copy in front of you, but we will get those to you within a week of the presentation, so that if you have questions today or ongoing, we will get those addressed and give you the most updated presentation. You may recall also, as we talk about pay in class and recruitment and retention, that in 2017, we actually identified concerns that should have addressed some of our pay in class concerns. We addressed a few of them, but on others, there was a failure to launch. We're hoping that this time around, we actually launch. HR and the departments to follow will share recruitment and retention and exit interview data to substantiate some of the reasons why we may be hemorrhaging as it relates to recruitment and retention on the non-sworn side. Some of these challenges are a result of our ability to continue to provide the level of service that you expect, that our residents and visitors to this wonderful county expect. We have facility challenges. We have some that are on life support. We have some that are in the hospital. We have some that are doing great. But we need to take time to look at all of them. So part of what you will hear from my office is a facilities plan to assess the health and welfare of our facilities, not just our employees. So the expectation is that you will receive and consider these reports between now and mid-February, late January at the latest. And then we will come back, Finance Director and I, and do kind of an overall summary of what you have heard. And then we will seek recommendations for the next biennial when we bring you that budget next July. At this point, I'd like to pause and ask if there are any questions about the process or anything that you're planning to hear today. If there's anyone who needs any chocolate or Cokes or caffeine, please do not hesitate to let me know, because we realize that these are going to be long and it's going to be full of numbers. So if there's anything you need to stay awake, just please let us know. We'll be happy to present that, get that to you.
I am apt to consider any agency's budget more favorably if,
Coffee.
this caffeine stays steady.
Thank you again. We appreciate your opportunity to bring this to you, and we look forward to answering any questions that you may have. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Hagler in HR.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman, Commissioners. Before I actually talk about the request from the Human Resources Department for FY23 and 24, I wanted to go through and share some data about the workforce and turnover that you may help when you're listening to other departments' presentations as we go forward. So the first chart you have up on the screen is we looked at a snapshot looking at 5-year milestones starting with FY10, FY15, and FY20, and then projection for FY21, just to give you a snapshot of the workforce. So if you're looking, you see that we ended year-end FY10 at 4,284 full-time employees, and we're projected to end FY21 with 4,427 employees. That's less an increase of 150 employees over that 11-year period. So we haven't had a really much of a growth in our full-time workforce. Similarly, for part-time employees, we went from 839 in FY10 to projected at 895 in FY21, less than 60 employee growth over that 11-year period. One of the things you'll see in looking at those increments is the full-time terminations have stayed relatively steady until we get to this year. We are seeing a much higher number of turnover happening. In fact, when we were preparing for this presentation, just looking at the first 3 quarters of this budget year, we had already exceeded the 395 terminations that we had in FY20 for just that 1 year. So we're projecting 540 for FY21 as being our full-time terminations overall. One of the things to keep in mind is the hybrid plan was implemented in January of 2010, and that's the same year the traditional pension plan was closed. And so all of the employees that have been hired since FY10 have been in the hybrid plan, which now is about 2,600 of the workforce out of the 4,427 that you see listed there. And one of the measures we did preparing for this presentation was looking at the retention rate. So we identified the full-time employees that were hired in FY10 and also the ones hired in FY15. And then we looked at the end of FY20 to see how many of those employees were still employed at the end of FY20, and that resulted in a 23% retention rate for those hired in FY10 that were still here, and 34% for those hired in 2015 that were still employed at the end of FY20. We have seen the turnover rate stay steady at about 9% for the overall population, but we are seeing that it's going to increase for FY21, ending at about 12% this year. And as you can see, hybrid terminations have been growing each year because that workforce keeps getting larger as new employees come on in the hybrid plan. But that turnover rate also is projected to be at 15% for the end of this budget year. And then lastly is the retiree population, just showing you what the retiree population was in FY10 at 1729. We're projected to end at just over 3,000 in FY21. And we have seen something a little bit different this year. Usually our retirements are mostly at the end of the year or the beginning of the year, and then they taper off throughout the year, but this year they have stayed steady. So we're seeing about 10 people retiring every month on average. And then we don't know what to expect for the year end if we'll still have a large group of people who elect to retire. The next slide is just a summary of the exit survey data we do receive. Just to keep in mind, we only get about 20% of the exiting workforce to give us feedback. And this gives you the last few years, the data that we have received. Still continues to be the top reasons that we hear from employees why they're leaving, that they tell us for a better opportunity, or they're leaving for retirement, better pay, or advancement opportunities. The next slide. Next one is just a quick snapshot of what we're seeing in our employment area. You'll see, looking at 2010, 15, and 20 again, the number of applications that we receive for our positions, it varies with the market. So when the market is down, we usually do see more like we did in 2015. Unusual is that we're seeing much less projected for 2021, with the market being better and the marketplace for employees looking for positions. But what's interesting is the jobs posted, you'll see is growing and are expected to be at 750 for this year. And that's not because we have more opportunities, that's more because our departments are having to repost jobs 2 and 3 times because they can't find applicants to fill those positions. And so there's more volume of those being posted. The applicants referred still projected to be at 20,000, which is a large number. But a lot of those applicants, even though they make through the initial referral meeting minimum qualifications, we lose them in the rest of the process for selection for sworn positions, for non-sworn positions, or they select themselves out because they don't want to accept the pay that we're able to offer them for the positions here at the county. The next block of data is the average days to fill the non-sworn positions. We only looked at the non-sworn for this case because the process for filling the sworn position has always been a little bit longer than it has been for non-sworn. But we are seeing a growth in that number, so that over the last few years, it's gone from 51 in 2018 is the average number of days to fill, to now we're averaging 92 days to fill our non-sworn positions. The other thing that we've seen over the last few years is the number of positions having to be on continuous recruitment because we have a hard time finding applicants to fill those positions. We've averaged about 50 each year, and currently, as preparing for this presentation, we have 26 positions that are on continuous recruitment looking for applicants. On the next slide is a list of some of those 26, and you'll notice in parentheses out by the side on a few of them, we've listed the number of days those positions have been posted. Some are quite more than 92. They're in the 160s. So they've been posted. Some of those are multi-incumbent jobs, so they still have vacancies, but they may have filled some of them, but they still have a lot of vacancies to fill. The next page is looking at the salary. So in June of this year, we had issued a benchmark survey of 75 positions that were identified by the agency directors for non-sworn positions. And we issued it only to Fulton, DeKalb, and Gwinnett County just to see how we measured in the marketplace for those positions. And we found that the average county salary was 7.89% behind the market. The average minimum salary was, for those positions, was 8.41% behind market. And as you'll see, some of the ones listed below are considerably much lower than the market. Those are some of those that are listed on the continuous recruitment that we're having a hard time to fill those positions. And then lastly, as Dr. Morris mentioned, some of the things that we're working on, the board approved issuance of an RFP for class and pay study. The oversight committee appointed by the county manager will be finalizing the recommendation to come at the next meeting on September the 28th. And the recommendations from that study are planned to be presented in the FY23 budget. And then also we will be working on the implementation of the 3% merit and step increases for FY22. That'll be the first pay period in March. And then also the first of the 3-year compression adjustments that will occur that same pay period in March for the sworn positions. So next is looking at the challenges and opportunities for the Human Resources Department. So we identified 3 areas that we're looking in for this year and for 23 and 24. The first is implementing technology improvements to streamline our services. Earlier this year, we implemented with Information Services a new applicant tracking system. Staff are continuing to learn that system and refine the services it can provide. Currently working with payroll and information services to upgrade Advantage HR, which is our HRS payroll system. Also includes our employee self-service system as well. That's to go live later, early in 2022. And then later this year, we'll start working with the county departments to implement a performance management system for the county. And as we implement the new technologies and staff continues to work with them, we also look at our processes to see how we can revise and streamline our services to the county departments and hopefully make it where more functions can be done at the department level, or actually in the case of employee self-service where the employees can do things themselves. And then the last one is to achieve the appropriate staffing levels that we need for human resources. And so over to the snapshot of our budget. So you'll see what was approved for FY21 and FY22 and what's requested for FY23. We do have an 8.2% request. That's for operating and personnel improvements. That's for 2 positions. And then the programs that are funded out of the Human Resources budget where we need some increase in funding. So the 2 positions we're asking for are first, another learning and development specialist. We only have 1 position. That position supports all of the mandatory training and the custom training that's offered through Human Resources. With the higher turnover that we have a challenge meeting all the mandatory training plus doing any other custom training that's requested by departments. In addition, there's no backup for that position. So if for some reason that person has to be out, that affects our delivery of training to the county departments and county staff. And then lastly, we are asking for a human resource specialist due to the current increase in workload and the workload we anticipate from the budget requests that you're going to be receiving from other departments for 23 and 24. The staff, we've only increased the full-time staff in HR by 3 positions since 2010. 2 of those were for new services that were added, and only 1 of them was for increased workload in the department. So overall, the personnel budget is an increase of 7.55% or $201,000 for the 2 positions we're asking for. The next is the increase to our operating budget. We do have a number of county programs where the general fund portion of those programs is budgeted in human resources. And in some of those areas, I just wanted to highlight where we're asking for some increases in 23 and 24. Over the last couple of years, one of those areas is background checks for pre-employment. Every state around the country over the last couple of years has been increasing their fees to run backgrounds. So whenever we have to run a background, if an applicant comes from multiple states or has lived in multiple states, we have to pay whatever fee that each state charges. And so that's making our background cost increase as well. So we're asking for a 20% increase for 23 in that account. The other is advertising. As we're challenged with trying to fill our positions, we need to do more recruiting than when we have more of an applicant flow coming in. So we're asking for an increase in our advertising budget. The third one is the En-ROADS program. We're currently working on partnering with En-ROADS Atlanta to have one intern for FY22. We would like to increase that to 2 interns for 23 and 24. And the next is skills testing. We need to look at replacing the skills testing software system we have now to be able to do more custom skills assessment for the county departments. And then last is implementing a service for incident management system, our hotline, for employees to be able to report complaints anonymously or confidentially. And those total up with increase to our operating budget of just over $100,000 or 12.56% to our operating budget. And again, the overall increase to our budget is 8.2% or $307,000 for 23 and 24. Any questions?
Just one that is pretty minute compared to the whole presentation, but first I just want to thank you for providing this. It was pretty eye-opening to see the variation in numbers, particularly on turnover. The intern numbers, is that for just the organization or department, or is that for across Cobb County?
For the En-ROADS intern?
The En-ROAD intern.
That is the fee for En-ROADS and for the salary for the individual.
So would those be interns for your department or across the organization?
It would be invoiced for a county department, but it's funded in the Human Resources Department for
Okay.
general fund.
All right. Do any commissioners have any questions? Yes, Commissioner.
Tony, you mentioned that the average minimum salary is behind by 8.41%. What is the average minimum salary?
Oh, it varies by position. I can give you the detail, Commissioner, but we just took an average overall of how much each one was behind, and so overall as consensus, it's 8.4% behind out of those 75 positions that we surveyed.
75 position. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Just piggybacking off of that, do you have an idea of what the lowest hourly wage is here?
I don't have the exact number, but I can get that for you, Commissioner. We have a number of positions that are below in the market in the $15 minimum that we keep hearing people are working towards moving towards.
Yes.
We have quite a large number of our workforce that are below the 15-hour.
Is that being considered with the assessment that's occurring? Because I presume if we were to try to raise that minimum salary up to 15, then there would be compression for other positions that are paid around that, so there would need to be some type of adjustment throughout the
Well,
organization.
I think we haven't discussed that specifically because we haven't hired a consultant, but I'm
Okay.
sure just the nature of the market going up in the metro area is going to probably already bring that up to that level, but that certainly can be part of the scope that we talk to the consultant about doing.
Are there any other questions from commissioners?
Just like to say one thing that you all feel free to ask the director. So, for example, if you wanted to know what his current staff right now is versus some of the benchmark counties with whom we either lose employees to or that we try to benchmark with, feel free to ask. So, for example, Gwinnett may have about 4,500 employees that HR works with on a routine basis. We have about the same number of employees. I'd just like Tony to briefly share what their employees are, the number of employees that Gwinnett has versus the number of HR employees that you're responsible for.
Sure. We have 27 full-time staff for the county to support the 4,400 full-time and the 895 part-time positions. At Gwinnett County, my last understanding was they were around 45 positions to support a similar size workforce.
How does that translate as far as workload is concerned? I noticed there was one slide where if you were to compare the requests that you have for employees versus operational requests, it looks like there's some outsourcing for different tasks, so are there some things that those other organizations are doing internally that we may be outsourcing? Do we have a greater caseload for our employees than other?
Well, a lot of the programs for our operating costs, the reason that it's high is they're programs that are funded in HR's budget, like the tuition assistance program is a big dollar amount that's in the HR operating budget for Cobb County. The employee assistance program for the county is funded and paid for out of the HR budget. So those are some of the
Okay.
things that drive up that operating budget a little bit higher than just being our normal operating cost. As far as outsourcing, I think all the jurisdictions are pretty similar, that we outsource as much as we can. I know that Gwinnett County probably does a little bit more outsourcing and takes advantage of outsourcing, but they still have a higher staff level to support internally. And comparably with DeKalb and Fulton, where their departments don't do all the same services that Gwinnett and Cobb County's human resources departments do.
Okay.
But they still have a larger staff.
Commissioner? Mhm.
So just to that point of kind of half the size, would you say we're more efficient, or would you say that staff has to do kind of a reprioritization on a consistent basis? Like, what do you think could describe the situation?
I think we do a little bit more efficient. We take advantage of the technology. There's a different service model at Gwinnett County. They have a full generalist model, which causes them to have and to need more staff to provide those to their organization. That's part of those reasons.
Fantastic. So capacity and workload are somewhat comparable. Like, I know we're in general as an organization, below capacity that where we need to be for the workload, but for the HR organization, how would you say that measures up?
How does it measure to Gwinnett County? Is that what you mean?
For you internally, capacity versus workload?
I would think our staff is spread pretty thin, and it really has been troublesome, particularly in this past year when we've had more turnover than we've had in 10 years. And it puts much more strain on the staff that are here, and I'm sure all the other county departments have the same thing because I hear from them. When it takes that much longer to fill a vacancy, then the staff you have that are picking up the extra load are having to do it for much longer while you try to fill a job and train that person. So it's causing much more of a strain and a burden, and then you risk losing some good staff that you do have here because the job market is good outside of Cobb County. So that's a fear I think all of us have with what we have going on.
Thank you.
Yeah. So along those lines, I know in one of your slides, you looked at some of the top reasons why people are leaving, but you could take a step back and say if there's something different. I think the word Dr. McMorris used was leadership. Maybe if there's a different way that we could approach HR, is there something else you think that we should be considering as a board beyond just looking at the same metrics that we consider year after year? Do you perceive there perhaps being a shift in how we need to consider things within the department that may not be encapsulated in just those two positions? Like, I can tell you for one thing that I'm concerned about is just the number of people leaving the workforce versus the number of people coming in. And is it just a pay issue, or is it just, at least what I listen to as far as news reports, there just seems to be a different mindset that people are bringing to work and how they value work that kind of contributes to whether or not they want to grow with an organization. And we don't have the same carrot that we may have traditionally had with the pension program. There's a different level of value people want to feel. So is there a way that we can shift? Is there a way that you've considered of how we can shift this work environment so that it perhaps keeps pace with the different level of expectation that people are bringing to work? And I can't tell you I know what the answer is because it's different from what the expectations I have, or I think were expected of me when I entered the workforce, but it just seems different today, especially when you have a pandemic and people are valuing live-work balance different than how they.
Well, I think definitely what we have been hearing and still continue to hear is that the pension plan, the older pension plan, the traditional, was a retention effort, and that's why you still have a lot of the, or most all of the workforce that are not hybrid that are still here until they reach eligibility to retire. But the hybrid population, as I had in the report, the average tenure is only 4 years in a plan that's now almost 11 years old. So the turnover we keep hearing from the people that are leaving is because of the pay, and some here lately have been just that the pension is not robust enough for them to stay here long-term. They need to look for other opportunities. And I think that's one of the things that is a hindrance to us, is that we encourage the employees to invest in the the defined contribution plan, but it's more difficult for them when they're not having the pay raises that give them the ability to invest those funds to plan for their retirement. So there's a tool that the commissioners give for employees to invest, but we still have over half the population are not even contributing at the maximum when there's 100% match to that would help them with that pension piece. And all I can go by is what I hear, Chairwoman, is that it's the pay. So I
Okay.
think first and foremost is to address the pay
I received that.
to be competitive.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Gambrill.
When you were comparing Gwinnett and them having 45 people in HR and then Cobb only having 27, is that because we have people that do HR type functions within the various departments? How does that play into it?
I think we do utilize our HR department reps more than some of the other jurisdictions do, but as far as I know, Fulton, DeKalb, and Gwinnett also all have department reps in each one of their county departments to help with being the liaison with their HR department.
Okay. Thank you. Just in general, Dr. McMorris, I think this, as far as format, this is good to hear an overview of the organization. I know we don't have the presentation in front of us. I think once we do get that, there's probably opportunity to look more closely at some of these things and ask more questions. Maybe we schedule that one-on-one with the
Yes.
director, because we won't have the
Yeah.
same opportunity.
Right, so the whole format for these presentations is very high level.
Okay.
And then if you would prefer a one-on-one with a department head or someone in finance to explain a few things, we can do that. Notice we're only talking about above what they already have. So if, what they're asking for isn't
Okay.
what they already have.
Okay.
So if you see that there's, where this doesn't match up, basically what they're saying is, the personnel I need is this, in addition to what I already have. The operating cost that goes with that is this, and if there are any capital needs, they will mention that. Some departments will be a little bit different, but what you see Tony showing basically is what he needs.
Okay.
So you don't see the full budget.
I see.
So there won't be all those lines that you would typically see for his entire operating budget. What they're showing you is very high level of what I need,
Okay.
what's missing. So that's kind of the format we're going to do. So what we'll do is go
Okay.
back, unless you all have questions or there's another column you want to add or any additional information, we would
Yeah.
take that back.
Okay.
Fix it, and then give you the hard
Perfect.
copy, rather than a lot of printing of things that would have to be reprinted.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, Commissioner Gambrill.
So the number that we're seeing here for the HR budget, is that only positions that are filled and actually have bodies in there, or is that also including positions that we're waiting to fill? Because I know in our budget, we have, funding for positions that we're waiting to be filled. So the number that we're looking at, is this actual people in HR, or does this include open positions that you're looking to fill?
So the budget number, is my understanding in everybody's budget, will be for positions that are authorized by the Board of Commissioners. And the funding that you'll see represented is, if it's vacant, then it probably is the entry salary for a vacant position. If it's filled, then it'll be the salary of the person that's in that position. So, but it's overall should be all positions that the board has authorized, vacant or filled.
So then I guess, can we also have a report that shows what vacant or filled positions have been in that department and for how long
They
they've been
would tell
vacant
you.
or filled?
Yes, ma'am, they will tell you. So for example, HR and finance are a little bit different. They're the smaller departments. When you get to departments like Michael, for example, in Parks, he's going to show you what the deficit of positions that he has that are not filled, but in addition to that, the position that he needs. So in some reports, you will hear them talk about the inability to fill some of the positions they already have. You heard me mention yesterday that Dallas was down in DOT almost by 30 people in that one particular division, right? But in addition to that, Drew may also say, but in addition to those, we also need this. That 30 is where we are now. Where we really should be is 35. And so those numbers will be reflected in what you already have, but they will clearly identify what they need as well. So we can provide that. So it would depend, is what I'm saying. It would depend on what they're asking. If they're asking to fill the positions that are already on the books, they would tell you that I'm down X number and I need those filled. That is likely going to be addressed with pay in class if it's a pay issue. So we don't want this to get confused for you guys to say that this is in lieu of what's going to come in pay in class. Okay. This is strictly what they need for the next biennial budget for consideration, right? Pay in class results will come probably around February, March as well, but that will be a separate report. That may change the numbers because what they're asking for, what Tony is asking for now, for example, is based on the salary of the position if it were advertised today and what the budget has approved today. Mm-hmm. If the pay in class numbers come back in and it should be $5 an hour more than what he's talked to you about, then those numbers would change. Okay. And that's why we would come back to you at the end and say, based on what we have learned also from pay in class, here's what we are. I want to address one thing that the chair asked earlier about how would we address those employees, the number of employees who may be below $15 and the compression. One of the things that we are going to ask the consulting firm to do is if we did nothing else but bring up that probably 700 plus folk who are below $15 an hour, what would that cost? And what is the compression number that it would, if you did nothing else? So you would get a report on that, just the folk who are below that 15, and what compression it creates and the cost, in addition to all those other positions that we are asking them to look at in the non-sworn arena. Commissioner Richardson, I believe you had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, so are we saying that there will be another work session presentation at the end of all of these? That'll include, okay, thank you.
And we're going to give you, the departments have been asked to provide you 3-hole punch copies of their presentation once they've had a chance to present, answer any questions. They will give you a 3-hole punch copy for your binder that we presented to you already, and then you will be able to keep up with it. But at the end, Bill has the dubious job of coming back and summarizing everything that has been asked for.
Okay.
It may not be approved, but everything that has been asked for, okay?
Thank you. Just one last thing,
Sure.
maybe observation. Don't take for granted our ability to contextualize your organization. So if we can see like some very basic information, org chart, just what are some general programmatic responsibilities of the department already, that can help me kind of
Sure.
get a sense of where you already are and then what additional requests.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tony. You did an excellent job of digesting all of that information and giving us some perspective on what's going on with our staffing levels and some of your other needs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chairwoman, I just want to add one thing to that. For the org charts and any additional information, a lot of departments will be providing you, because this presentation is about as high level as it can be to get through every department. They're going to
Okay.
be providing you additional handouts and backup.
Perfect.
So that will all come after they
Great.
present. So in addition to the presentation, you're probably going to have a bunch of handouts to give you additional support, org charts, whatever that may
Okay.
be. And then each department will seek if any of the commissioners would like to meet one-on-one to have
Wonderful.
additional discussions.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
And then the last part of that is after the presentation, we're going to turn on, like, for example, Tony's presenting today, I'm presenting today. We're going to turn on the requests in OpenGov for you all to view the line item budgets and justifications for each one. So as each one presents, we'll turn those on within a week later so that you can go through those in detail, because you're just seeing the additional asks, but you'll get the whole history in OpenGov as well.
Great.
So that may lead to additional questions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can I use that? All right, thank you. Yes, sir. All right. Is everybody still good? All right. If you can make it through today, that's a good sign. So the next meeting may be a little bit more challenging. We're going to have a full agency. So we're going to have some of the small guys go today.
Okay.
We'll walk through those. So first of all, thank you all for your time. Thank you for asking for us, all the departments, to do this. This is extremely important. We take it very seriously. So I want to go through our presentation real briefly. I want to include our mission statement because this is one of the big drivers of our requests. As you kind of walk through this, this is going to give you an idea of why the people that we need in finance need to be highly educated and highly technical. Okay. Everything we do has to be in compliance with state, federal, local laws, as well as the Government Accounting Standards Board, as well as the General Accepting Accounting Principles. So we are looking for very highly technical and educated people, which makes it a big challenge for us to recruit. I know Tony's already mentioned paying class, and we're very excited about that, and we hope that addresses some of our vacancy needs. But it makes it very difficult for us to compete, and one of the biggest reasons we're seeing is pay. Okay, so challenges and opportunities. Ours are pretty straightforward. We are looking to attract and retain highly technical and skilled positions, as we already talked about. As I previously mentioned, one of our biggest challenges with our vacant positions is that by the time we are able to go through the process, and we may have to open that position 2, 3, and 4 times to do that, we may get luckily to have a few applicants willing to interview us even after we've discussed pay. But most of the time, in our last year especially, by the time they've come in and we're like, we love you, we'd love you to start. Oh, well, I have 5 offers. Can you match any of these? And I'm like, sorry, can't. So we've had a grant position, for example, that's been vacant for a year. Our department has 1 grant position. I think we all know we've gotten some grant revenues this year. So we've had nobody in grants for the entire year because we can't attract and retain anybody. So that's one of our big struggles as we're looking at highly technical positions. Luckily, we've been able to.
Is it the cost person? Is that
it is
pay thing?
It is come down to pay. We've had the few that we've had to be able to interview. We've actually reached out to other firms that have grant certifications, and they've kind of given us what the entry level salary needs to be, and we're just nowhere close.
Okay.
So that's one of our challenges. We have been able to reclass that position to a higher grade, still nowhere close to where it needs to be based on what we're hearing for the people that have that grant certification. We're reposting it again. Hopefully we can attract somebody. But in our request, you'll see an additional grant position as we move forward. But we are hoping that the paying class study will address some of these needs. So this is something we're very optimistic about. Establish appropriate staffing levels to properly safeguard and record and report the county's financial activity. So this is one of our struggles as we've been down positions, and we'll kind of show you some of our position history, is that we're having staff basically get burnt out to the point where we're constantly down staff members. They're putting in the additional work and really getting burnt out to the point where we're having people leave because of that. And those are our best performers. And we understand we really need to keep them, so getting this appropriate staffing level is going to be critical to our success and actually keeping the great staff that we have. And then one of the unique things that we have is maximizing the county's return on investable assets. One of the things that our department doesn't have is somebody who manages our cash daily, basically puts it to work to earn money. So this is money that goes into the general fund, fire fund, water funds, creates additional funding for SPLOST. We don't have anybody who can do that on a daily basis actively. So basically what it does is it sits in the Georgia Fund 1 account in the state and earns a minimum return on investment. If you have somebody who actively did this, it would pay for themselves and generate additional dollars to the county. So that's one of the big areas that we see as a potential request, and we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so our overall increase that we're requesting for the 23 is $526,000 and change. It's a 16% increase. And then we have a slight reduction that we're proposing for 2024. Okay, I want to call your attention to some of the charts on this page, but before I do that, I want to just point out, well, actually on that chart on the page, the blue graph that you see there, the county's adopted budget has increased over $288 million in the past 10 years. This does not include the 3 active SPLOST funds, about to be 4 active SPLOST funds that we have, as well as any county grant funds. So this is just the general operations of the county, not to include those. Finance staff has decreased from a high of 36 positions in 2015 down to 27 in 2021. As a comparison, Gwinnett has a similar size budget. Their finance team is 65. Okay, we're asking to get 5 new positions, and we'll walk through the detail of those positions. That'll still put us below our 2015 level of 36 and far below any comparable county in the metro area. In addition to the size of the budget increase, yes, sorry.
I don't have a question, but because there's just so much.
I wanna
can you
pause
just
and-
kind of, pause, and I can just kind of digest what you just said by looking
Absolutely.
at the graph? Thank you.
Yeah. And then please let me know when you continue, because I want to add to that graph. There's a lot of information on that graph. I think it's very, very beneficial.
Okay.
Okay. All right. One of the other lines on that graph, you'll see kind of an orangish color. That's our cash that we have on hand. Okay. In 2012, it was $335 million. In 2021, it's $706 million. So when we talk about investable assets for the county that could be used to generate additional funding for projects and programs, this is where that comes from. This is spread throughout the entire county. So this isn't just general fund dollars. This isn't just fire, water. It's everybody, including SPLOST. So any interest we earned goes back to those funds. So SPLOST, if you're looking for additional funding, interest earnings is an easy solution. It's just having somebody who actively invests those funds to get you additional dollars to put towards programs. So this is one of our requests that we'll walk through, but just so you can see that size of that growth in that period of time of dollars that we could really be putting to work to benefit the county.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know this may be a little hard to read, so you don't feel like you need to read it. I am going to walk through these a little bit. So our Treasury Division Manager position that we're requesting, this is that position that would be dedicated to investing the county's assets. This would be the position that would be investing that $706 million every day to get the most return on investment. And we have very restrictive investment policies, but even if we were to buy treasuries or something like that, we'd more than generate the cost of this position, as well as adding for additional program needs throughout the county. Okay. And then we are asking for a grants division manager. I know we're all aware of the grants that we received this past year, over $230 million of grants. No grant position in finance. We haven't been able to fill it. But despite that, this is an ongoing need for the county because we receive, even pre-pandemic, $36+ million every year in federal funding that we need somebody who's responsible for the compliance of those grants as well as the reporting requirements for those grants. So this is, again, a highly skilled and highly technical position. It's hard to compete in this market because everybody right now, especially with the pandemic grants, is looking for this position. So this is a high demand position and it's something we greatly need in the county. This is protecting us because ultimately I know Debbie Blair is working nonstop from the legal side. We need somebody from on our staff to help her with the compliance piece because ultimately if we misspend this, that's money we could have to pay back. And that's something that's very concerning. So we're very thankful that the board approved the contract with Deloitte today to assist with this program, but this is going to be an ongoing need for the county as we move forward. In addition to this, we would be looking at this person to generate additional grants for the county, look for opportunities that would be available after the pandemic, as well as working with Deloitte during the pandemic. So this would be a critical position that we absolutely need. And as I go through this list, I just want to let you know, these are all positions that we basically need immediately. We're asking these as part of the 2023, but as you can hear, at least the first two, these are all things that we need today. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. All right, we talked about the budget growth in the county, the services in the county, the SPLOSTs that are come in. We have a budget staff of 3 in the entire county that does all this work from budget adoption to agenda review to inputting budget transactions and so on. We greatly need another budget position. So that is something that is absolutely critical. And thankfully, the board approved us to invest in OpenGov to make use of the technology. I mean, we were doing this all on spreadsheets for years, decades. And I can't tell you how many times you get the 10th version of a spreadsheet and it's slightly different. And then you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on version 9 and you're on version 10, so your information didn't get in there. So thankfully, by investing in OpenGov, the departments have a live feed of their activity, and as well as the Board of Commissioners. So this is a great enhancement that technology has played into helping us maintain an extremely low budget team. But we're to the point, just on budget transactions alone, we need another budget person. And the last position that we're requesting is the fixed asset accountant 2. The county has $5.8 billion of assets in the county. We have 1.5 people who maintain all of that. The transactions, the depreciation, just maintaining it when we buy and sell property, They have to record all that. So it's one full-time person and one part-time person. No cross-training, no backup. That person's out sick, nothing gets done. So this is a critical role that we absolutely need in the department. And I hope you see with this request that this is the basic needs. This is not, we're not asking for 40 positions because we think we're going to grow in programs. This is just what we need today. We think we are an extremely efficient team. I think you get a great value for your dollar. One of the things that we are very proud of is our efficiencies. Just looking at our payroll division, for example, that's a staff of 3 that does payroll for 5,000 people. A few years ago, we were asked to look to outsource that. Wasn't even close. You'd triple the dollars that it would cost to provide payroll services versus the staff that we have on hand. And they do a fantastic job. I can say that with all of our divisions, they do a fantastic job, but they are to the point where they're going to get burnt out and we're going to lose people, and then there's going to be mistakes, errors, and that's going to cause us some problems. Okay. All right, so with that, we have a minimum operating request, and it's specifically tied to the 5 positions that we're asking for. It's $10,000, $2,000 a position. That's just for office equipment for these 5 staff members. We are proposing to pare that back in 2024 as we buy the equipment. So there you can see the computer supplies for $10,000. Sorry. And we're proposing to prepare that back in 2024 and just leave the remaining in there, for travel and training to train our new staff members. So once we buy the equipment in 2023, we'd like to keep $3,000 of that $10,000 for travel and training to just make sure our staff stay current on their certifications and training as we move forward. Okay, so here's our overall request again. We're only asking for $526,000. And then you can see the critical need of these positions. I hope that's very clear for the board. And if you have any additional questions on those, please let me know. I'd love to walk through those in more detail with you in a future meeting. So again, if we get these 5 positions, just to give you a comparison, again, we're at 27 full-time positions today. Gwinnett's at 65. We don't need to go to 65. I would never even think to ask that. I think 5 is a fair number for what we're asking, and I hope, again, you see the urgency of those positions. And again, one of those will pay for itself. So that treasury position, it's 0 cost to you. So that's one that we are fortunate to have a solution for. The grants position also could be shared. It could be used to charge, part of that position could go against grants for admin. So it's not all general fund dollars that we're asking here. So I just wanted to let you know that there's other solutions to fund these positions as we move forward. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time today. Thank you for listening to our needs, and I hope you give us consideration as we move forward. And with that, I would just ask if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, Commissioner Burrow?
Thank you, Bill.
Yes, ma'am.
With the 5 new positions, do you have space on your floor to expand?
We do, yes. We've actually worked with property management. We've had the space that we need, so we're not asking for any additional capital. We actually have been very frugal with our office equipment, and we're refusing to throw things away. We actually have an office stacked with desks right now because we know we're going to need them at some point. I mean, we have drawers that don't really open, but they're functional. So we know we have those, and we're ready to go if we're able to fill those positions. But we do have the space. One of the things that we actually did a few years ago when we remodeled the 4th floor is we basically were more efficient with our space, which freed up additional office space because we knew at some point we need to get back to the staffing levels that we had in 2015.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do any other commissioners have any questions? Oh, yes, Commissioner Gambrill.
Okay, I'm going to pick on you for a second.
Absolutely. Feel free.
So you're saying you only need $10,000 to give 5 people computers and such?
Computers.
Yet we've continually seen agenda items showing that each Surface is running $4,000. So help me. You're a little underfunded here.
Sure. So we worked with IS, but that's for the basic desktop. And what we've done through our finances operating budget in years past is we bought additional monitors, because one of the things that we do to make ourselves more efficient is every office space when we do our computer replacement lease comes with 1 monitor. We've bought additional monitors using our funds, operating funds, and savings that we've had to provide additional monitors. So that's one of the things that we help to do, keep our costs low. We're not asking for services because I think where you see those high costs are those services that go to the field. Our folks are in-house. They don't leave their office unless they can work remotely from home. And that's something that we've asked them to, that we've been very flexible and very beneficial and been able to do that during the pandemic. But in normal circumstances, they're in their office. They don't bring computers to the field. So ours have a little bit lesser cost because it's not a tough book or something like that. It's going to be out in the elements and get banged up.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have a question, and this perhaps dovetails into Tony's presentation. You had compared our numbers of employees to Gwinnett, 27 versus 65. It would be helpful to see a breakdown again of how many are on the hybrid plan versus the pension plan. My perception is there could be a different incentive why somebody might stay and be overworked.
Sure.
If they know they're working towards that end versus if we start to see turnover or if people start to retire, is it likely that 27 is that number? And I know we're just looking at this on a year-by-year basis. I'm just trying to trend forward and think about, is this realistic, and are we going to have to come back and then start looking at adding other positions, because it may be that the workload that people have is not realistic. If I look at that, that contrast in staffing, I don't know.
Well, from our side, one of the biggest challenges that we face is our senior managers, basically from manager level to director. Almost all of those are on the traditional plan. I have 2 that are in my manager classification that are on the hybrid plan. Outside of that, what I'm typically seeing is people that are below the manager level. The vast majority of those are all on the hybrid plan. And we're seeing the greatest turnover there. Where our challenge that we'll be facing in future years is when you have those managers that are on the traditional plan retire and getting somebody in to replace for those. Luckily, we had to go through that situation a couple years ago. The only reason we were able to fill it is we were able to get an internal candidate from another department. Everybody from external that we brought in to interview said we weren't even close on pay. So the only reason that we were able to attract somebody is they were on the traditional plan within another department and could receive a slight pay increase. Outside of that, we'd probably still be looking, to be honest.
Okay, so forgive me, I'm going back and forth between
Sure.
HR and your presentation. So those employees who are here not at that level, is there opportunity for us to consider how we encourage them to consider those roles? I don't know, train them so that they can be considered for those roles? So
Sure.
we can retain that. I mean, it would still leave a gap in their position, but then we might pay less to bring somebody into their role if we can.
And we're actually experiencing that. We want the best employees. We heavily invest in training. And one of the things that we see, especially on the hybrid employees, by the time we get them trained up and certified, they're here maybe another year, because that's the window to say you don't have to pay back your training, but then they can go and make significantly more money elsewhere. So that's what we're kind of seeing, is by the time we really get them trained, go through some certifications, they're going to be just about where we want them, but they're going to have that certification that's going to be attached to that resume. And they know that if they stay 1 year after that training, then they're free and clear, and they can go make 10, 20,000 more somewhere else. We just experienced that in one of our risk divisions. Great employee, just completed all of his training, and we were in the path to basically, even if we were to promote that individual, it wouldn't have been comparable to what he could make elsewhere. And that's really what we're seeing, and that's the challenge. And then the other side is you don't want to not train them because you want the best employee, but by the time you get to that training phase and it's complete, they get, Tony said, the average tenure for a hybrid employee is 4 years. By that time, they're pretty well trained and very marketable. So one of the things that we've seen from our folks is that, if there's a promotion opportunity internal, that's in a career path moving forward, that is something that's very attractive. If they get to a point where there's a ceiling, even for a short period of time, I'm going to see what's available, and if they can, make 20,000 somewhere else, they're going to go. And I think that's just the market.
Are you losing employees to the private sector, or are they considering other governmental positions?
It's, right now, actually, it's a lot of local governments. We're losing them to Fulton. We had an employee that had a significant offer from another, well, I'll say Fulton County, and we couldn't match their offer. The only reason that they were elected to stay with us is because they were on the traditional plan. We were able to work with them, but if they were on the hybrid plan, they wouldn't be here.
Okay.
And that's really the driver. And as I know Tony said, one of the things that we're seeing is because pay, it sounds like it all comes down to pay a lot, because you have a lot of people who are not investing in that 4% match. Because if they put in 4, the county matches 4. A lot of them aren't maxing out because they don't have the funds to do it. So that's one of the challenges, especially with our entry to mid-level employees. That's just not, they don't have the pay to feel comfortable to match the 4% is what we hear.
Okay.
So really, they're losing out on a free benefit by not contributing the 4%.
Okay.
But they got to have the funds to do it.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for that informative presentation.
And then please, I will send you a copy of the presentation, and then also be following up with an email to see if anybody would like to meet and get some additional information. So I look forward to that. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Not everybody at once.
Sorry, the medical examiner's next. I didn't tell you, Doc. I'm sorry.
I gotta follow him. I gotta follow you.
Commissioners, are we good? Anybody need a break? You're good? Okay.
Do we need a break? Now would be a good time. I can make a run for it.
You can. All right.
Oh,
you're
hey,
good.
there we are. There I am. All right.
In your beautiful office, in your building.
Yes. So good afternoon. I'm Dr. Gulledge, and I'm the Chief Medical Examiner. And I'm going to start by admiring our lovely new facility. That was part of the 2016 SPLOST and was approved by the board. We've been in it just over a year. And I don't think we're going to go back to the old building. I'm feeling good about staying put. We're going to see some of the glamour shots throughout the presentation from inside the building. I'm going to give you a brief caveat. We have been having a few issues with OpenGov. Our numbers may not be the exact numbers you get at the handout, simply because things weren't adding up and we were using calculators, and budget was working very hard with us to help us, but it just wasn't quite working. All right, next slide. So our mission statement, our mandate as the medical examiner's office is to provide death investigation services to the people of Cobb County. Our role as the medical examiner is defined by the Georgia Death Investigation Act. It encompasses any non-natural death where the injury occurs within Cobb County, or natural deaths which are sudden, unexpected, or where there is no physician to certify the death. I'm going to go right into our challenges. This has been a challenging year. The past years have already provided ample challenges within our office. Ever since 2015, when I came on board, we have been working on rebuilding our office from its prior challenges. We were fortunate to be able to begin building our new facility at the end of 2019. Unfortunately, 2020's real difficulties did not wait for us to finish and move in. So we had to improvise in our old building for almost 6 months before we could upgrade. I think some of you may have seen the tents in the parking lot. We have been fortunate to work with our partners in public health over the course of this pandemic, generating data and allowing insight into some of the root causes of the increased death rate. We are currently working with Cobb Douglas Public Health on a joint project which is providing a lot of data regarding our county's COVID-19 rate, as well as co-infection rates with other respiratory illnesses. Unfortunately, as we will see, there has been a significant rise in the number of cases since the beginning of 2020. That's medical examiner cases, not just COVID cases. This increased workload has stretched our office, quite honestly, past the breaking point in several instances, which has resulted in numerous staff leaving our office and, in fact, leaving the field altogether. Hey, I was on board. You asked for an org chart. It's here. I did it completely by accident. Or I'm precognitive or possibly psychopathic. Take your pick. Our office is functionally divided into 3 divisions: investigations, morgue operations, and administration. I say functionally because, quite honestly, we have so few people that everybody kind of tries to do everybody else's job. We have 15 full-time positions. We have 5 part-time positions. All 3 of our divisions are under our operations manager. Our longtime operations manager, Mr. Gerhardt, is retiring at the beginning of October. We were very fortunate to hire Charmin Orzi from 911 to come be our new operations manager. So she started last week and has no idea what she is in for. The operations manager manages all 3 divisions. Our 3 medical examiners provide direct oversight for individual cases. We currently have a grant-funded accreditation coordinator who is assisting the office with progress towards name accreditation. Besides her real job of writing policy, she's also our designated safety officer, our forensic photographer, our open records custodian, a receptionist, and she occasionally releases bodies to the funeral homes. A point I want to make clearly here: we are managing this office with 15 full-time staff. Other offices with the populations of the size of Cobb have 25 to 30. There is a reason the chief ME in DeKalb does not mop his morgue floor. And there is a reason that the chief ME in Denver doesn't answer the door. But I can tell you from experience, the Cobb chief ME, he does both of those things. All right, I know everybody is immediately going to look at numbers, but the first thing I want you to do is look at that caseload graph at the bottom. That is, since 2015, that is the number of deaths that are reported to our office that require an investigation. That is the number of cases that we accepted jurisdiction on, which means that the office actually had to, the medical examiners had to investigate and certify the cause of death. And the examinations performed is the amount of cases we actually brought into our office and did some sort of examination on. We had a 30% increase in 2020, both in investigations and in number of cases. We had no additional staff. We required massive amounts of overtime for our staff. We never stopped working. We still work 24/7, straight through the middle of the pandemic. And quite honestly, during those limited operation periods, we got quite a bit busier, excuse me. No comparison slide does good without background. So this is as fresh a data as I can give you. This is up to August of this year. Our blue line here was our caseload in 2019. This is how many cases were reported to our office. This is sort of a snapshot of how much our investigators are doing. We have 6 investigators, and they work tirelessly. During our orange line, you can see is 2020, and it was a record year. And we performed more scene investigations we ever have. There were quite a number of times where our forensic investigator was the only person willing to walk into a house where a COVID death had occurred. This took a real toll. Hundreds of hours of overtime a month spread out among 6 people. By the end of the year, 3 of our longest serving forensic investigators left the field and took 30 years of experience with them. It's easy to imagine that at some point everything's going to go back to normal. I don't know what that means at this point, but what I wanted to show you was our current numbers, because that green line, that's what this year is. And I don't see any normal in there.
Excuse me, Dr. Gulich.
Yes, ma'am.
Are any of these services outsourced?
No, ma'am.
Can they be?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Commissioner Gamble has another.
Yes, ma'am.
But if I recall, you were outsourcing from other areas and doing their work as well, correct? Is that still happening?
What others?
Weren't you like contracted with Wellstar I remember it was a couple years ago that it was discussed that you were going to essentially contract work to do for
That's correct.
others.
Yes, ma'am.
So is that still happening?
It does, but it is extremely infrequent. I'll show that actually upcoming. We do still have some of those, the Wellstar cases. We do 2 or 3 a year. It's not a load that is taxing us at this point.
Okay.
Just as a side note, September, today is the 14th, we're at 97 cases for this month.
I'm sorry. I know you want to finish your presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
But I'm just looking at the past 2 slides and to ask, what is the ramp up to get assistance? Well, let me ask this even more. Do you have vacant positions?
No, ma'am.
In that 6, so you're just at your max level.
Yes, ma'am.
What does it take to ramp up somebody to?
If we find somebody with experience, our training tends to be, depending on the amount of experience and where they came from, we can have somebody working with us within a month or 2. If they're an experienced death investigator, then what we have to teach them is where's Mableton, not how to do a death investigation.
Okay.
For people who are coming in who are not experienced death investigators, it takes 6 to 9 months to train.
Okay. Thank you.
If we go to the next slide, this is actually the exams that we have completed, and this is, again, January of 2019 through August of 21. Same blue line as 2019. That's sort of a baseline, if you will. We thought we had it pretty well pegged. We knew what our caseload was going to be like. 2020 sort of took that out of the water. And I'm going to be honest, 2021's been a real surprise for our number of cases. You'll notice August, we actually had our biggest month ever, 95 cases in 1 month. That's how many cases that the pathologists and the technicians did.
Dr. Gullis, these are COVID related?
We're not sure, not entirely. So we did see an increase in the number of COVID cases during August.
Okay.
One of the things that we have been working heavily with Cobb Douglas Public Health is that just because somebody has COVID does not mean they are dying from COVID.
Yes.
And so while we see it in our car wrecks and we see it in our drug overdoses and we see it in our homicides, we also see it in quite a number of natural deaths that we have to then determine whether COVID is the causing agent. We've been working with, since the middle of January, we've been actually working with Cobb Douglas Public Health and have been testing every single person that comes through the medical examiner's office, which has been a great project because we're not only able to identify asymptomatic positives, but we're also seeing the combined nature of respiratory infections with COVID and whether or not those are significant. Again, September, I got the number today, it's 43, which means we're halfway through the month and we're halfway to where August is. Because this increase in cases, we've had to cut back significantly on when we're able to release our decedents to the funeral homes because our technicians are responsible for that, and if we're in the morgue, we're not releasing bodies. I know very much our funeral homes would really like to be able to come and pick up their cases more often, but there's quite honestly sometimes just nobody there to release that body. So here's a look at our really,
Wait a minute, what are
really.
you saying? So that you're saying the work has already been done, somebody just needs to process it administratively?
We have to, get the body out of the cooler, confirm the identity, make sure that the person, all of the personal effects match, sign it, get it into their, and let them take it off. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But unfortunately, when we're in the morgue till 3 o'clock, there's nobody doing that.
Okay.
So here's our lovely autopsy room before we messed it up. It's actually still, it looks very good. You'll note we are looking for 7 positions starting in 23, although quite honestly, most of them we could use right this minute. If you'll go to the next slide. these are our positions. We need more forensic investigators. There's no two ways around that. If we take 6 to 9, we come much closer to a level where we're capable of supporting the county. We have 6 people. We cover 24/7, 365, and that's really not fair. We're kind of pretending to be a 24/7 operation without the staff to do that. 9 investigators and a supervisor is a very realistic number for our size and our complexity. We need more forensic technicians. We actually have less forensic technicians than doctors, which is occasionally why I end up mopping the floor. Besides assisting during the autopsy, they maintain the morgue, they release the decedents to the funeral homes, manage our specimens, evidence, tissue, transport specimens to labs. Most ME offices have 1.5 to 2 times the number of technicians as they do doctors. I'll be honest, we need these positions today. If American Rescue Plan funding is available, we would happily appreciate it. I mentioned our accreditation coordinator earlier. She's been grant funded for the past 4 years. We should be able to fund her through June of '22. I'm very proud to say we are about 80% complete with name accreditation. We are looking to have our on-site inspection in late spring of next year. As I mentioned, she's an integral part of our administration team, and quite honestly, I do not know what we would do without her. And we are requesting a second admin assistant. We have 1 full-time administrative position who's responsible for, well, basically everything. Dictation, death certificates, answering the phone, case distribution, answering the door. We actually added 2 part-time admins because, well, we were leaving people at the door and nobody was answering the phone because we just didn't have anybody to do it. We honestly need a second person to deal with our death certificates and other important legal functions that the office serves. We have 1 person who can release a death certificate. If she's on vacation, no death certificates leave our office. Operationally, we're really not that complex, although it looks like a huge jump. That's because we haven't met our adopted budget several times. Our operational budget just has increased significantly in the past years because of the rising costs of transporting our decedents, toxicology, supplies. We've gone over our operating budget repeatedly. That number in the proposed is an actual, honest representation of what our operational budget costs. That's what it costs to run our office. If we look at the next slide, our lab and scientific supplies, we do more cases, we need more supplies. That's all there is to it. Our professional services is our outside testing, it's consultations with specialists, toxicology, laboratory testing. We do have some grant funding that offsets this cost. It does not show up in the budgets directly. Public utilities, well, it turns out it costs more to keep the lights on in our new place. And our annual maintenance, we have a number of contracts with specific vendors for some of our specialized equipment, the surgical lights, radiography equipment, the coolers, the scales, software. We're a really complex little operation. We have a contracted decedent transport service for several years. We still get comments from police officers saying, thank you for getting that, thank you for approving that. And I'd like to thank the board for approving that because they are so happy that they are not the ones carrying decedents downstairs. That contract is being rebid in the next few months. It is possible that number will change soon, but I don't know to what. Just when we were talking a minute ago about revenue, while we are not a money-making operation, we've tried to find ways to offset some of our costs. We've been funded repeatedly with federal grants. We've had grant funding with the state health department and Cobb Douglas Public Health. You can see over the past few years, we have brought in a little bit of money from grant funding. Revenue, our revenue was primarily through that contract with Wellstar Pathology. Again, while they were renovating their morgue, they used us quite heavily. Now it's pretty occasional. I think we've done 2 cases this year for them. We also generate some revenue for anytime the office does a consultation for civil litigation, anytime we consult with criminal defense attorneys or our district attorneys, that is completely free. But if a case that we do the autopsy on goes to civil litigation, then we charge the civil attorneys a fee for our time. So in summary, really what we need to do is get to an appropriate staff level to adequately investigate our deaths. We're going to reduce our overtime and our part-time costs. We're going to support employee retention. We're going to reduce some of these tasks we've outsourced. We're going to release death certificates 5 days a week. And we're going to hopefully release decedents 6 days a week. And I think there will be a lot of people happy about that. And we'll put ourselves in a position to receive and maintain our accreditation. Really, this is going to increase service to the citizens of our county. We'll be able to respond to deaths in a timely fashion. It allows the police to get back into service faster. It directly impacts families who are waiting with their deceased loved ones. So let's look at those numbers one last time. To put this increase in perspective, this will put us in a per capita rate near where other accredited ME offices our size are. Your handouts will have comparison slides for offices that are comparable to ours. I routinely communicate with my colleagues. This is a small to normal budget for the county the size of Cobb. It is a significant increase in our budget. There's no denying it. It's where we should be. Without these changes, I can tell you, when our inspectors come and visit, they are not going to see that we are an efficient operation. They are going to see that we are a deficient operation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yes, Commissioner Burrow.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Good to see you, Dr. Gullidge.
Thank you.
The accreditation coordinator that you have now
Yes, ma'am.
is grant funded. So is the request for an additional person or to make her out of our budget and not dependent on the grant?
Correct. She is currently grant funded. Her grant will end at the end of June of 2022. We would simply like to pick her up as a full-time position, not adding a new position. Unfortunately, the federal grants that we funded her with have all dealt with wanting offices to become accredited, and at our last grant cycle, they very politely told us, we have given you the amount of money we are going to give you. Do it.
Okay. So the admin positions, I know you said she did a lot of other things besides the accreditation. Would that free her up to solely focus on accreditation with other positions doing mopping the floor?
Honestly, I think what we'll spend a lot of her time and effort doing, besides some of the general other administrative tasks she's picked up over time, honestly, her position in another office would be a deputy operations manager or a deputy director style position. We're going to leverage the fact that she actually was a photographer. And has always wanted to be a forensic photographer. So we're going to use her in a dual role to upgrade our photographs that we're taking in the morgue, which end up serving as exhibits in court, as well as the administration. Because once we achieve accreditation, her role will still be necessary because everything has to be redone annually, but it's not going to be quite as time consuming. And so I think it'll allow for a really effective position where we can leverage her talents to do multiple things at the same time.
Well, I definitely see the importance of being accredited, and I know that we have been working on that for a long time.
Yes, ma'am, we have.
We're close, but we need to get there. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Gambrill.
Yes, ma'am.
But I know several years ago you were saying it was hard to even find people to come work because there just wasn't a workforce out there. Is that still the case, or has a new interest peaked?
So we have several issues with our workforce. recruiting pathologists is extremely difficult. There's just not enough. There's less than 500 in the country. Everyone competes for them. The only way you get one is to steal one from somewhere else. We currently are good. We have 3 pathologists. That's the correct number for our office. Our investigators, traditionally, when I started, investigators it was always a second career for somebody. They had retired as a police officer, or they had retired as a nurse, or they had retired as some sort of adjacent kind of field. We're seeing a lot of people who are walking out of college wanting to be a death investigator. I think it probably has something to do with the amount of television visibility to the field. But there is no real training other than on-the-job training. There's no courses people go to become a death investigator. Several of the people we've hired recently were able to do internships in local medical examiners or coroners' offices to get some experience, and they've worked out very well for us. With our technicians, there is absolutely no training other than on the job. We have traditionally had a forensic intern position where we took somebody who had graduated from college and had said, I want to work in forensics, but most of them didn't even know what that meant. And we hired them and brought them in, and we taught them to be a forensic technician. We've had great luck with that program. Our last forensic technician left us in December, and we had so much happening, unfortunately, through the early part of the year with losses, staff losses, that we weren't able to bring in a new forensic intern as of yet. I would honestly like to have a pipeline where we're training these forensic interns on a regular basis. I would love to have a pipeline where we're training forensic investigators on a regular basis, whether for us or for other jurisdictions. They're both in short supply. But right now we've got to get ourselves situated before we can really get ourselves in a pipeline. We're training one right now. We can train one at a time very effectively. We don't train 2 at a time very well. Sometimes we have good luck and are able to hire somebody who has experience and they come in, hit the door rolling. And sometimes we have to really bring people up from the get-go.
Any other questions? That was quite informative, and I appreciate your candor with the data and letting us know what your needs are, but also being able to condense that towards the end. And I appreciate your reference to a pipeline. So I appreciate your question, Commissioner Gambrell. And I think that could perhaps be an opportunity for us with HR, not just in the ME's office, but it certainly looks like there's a lot of opportunity there considering the limited persons that are out there. Is that something you budget internally, or is that something that somebody might do in an externship? Is that a partnership with a program?
We have budgeted that internally in the past. We pay them mainly so that we have workman's comp since they're working in a hazardous environment. And quite honestly, I want them to have some amount of skin in the game, because when a high-profile case comes through our autopsy room, if they have absolutely no investment in what they're doing, then it's much more efficient for them to sell photos to the New York Times than it is to continue working for us. So that's one of those things that we vet very heavily. We don't want individuals. We want individuals who want a career and understand that career can easily be lost by bad choices. Okay. So it's just a side note. We are working and will be working in the future with Morehouse School of Medicine as well as with KSU. On trying to create some educational interactions. We've been working for the past year with South College's Physician's Assistance Program teaching some of their physician's assistants. They come to the morgue and get to see an autopsy, and while they're doing that, we get to teach them a little bit, which is great because actually all three pathologists really, really like to teach, and it's the one thing that we don't have the opportunity to do. So as we move past some of these initial huge hurdles, that's actually going to be one of our future goals, is to provide an educational service to our local people and give them that opportunity to explore what forensic medicine is and what their role may be in it.
Okay. This may go without saying based on how this presentation may have impacted the other board members, but if you would indulge me, I would like to share with the county manager that this is work that we do need to be prioritizing as far as ARP funds are concerned. There's nothing that I think compounds the significant hardship of a death than to be waiting for that death certificate or the release of a body for a funeral. I can't imagine.
Sure.
that.
Absolutely. I think we've all been there. It is on the list. Remember, we were
Okay.
talking about a spreadsheet list
Yeah.
of the department needs. And so we already have his needs on there.
Okay.
So if it were to be approved by the board through ARP funds, then we would take that off the request for the biennial, but then add it for the next biennial.
I would say that, I mean, the only bad thing about using ARP funds for ongoing expenses is that we still have to build that in the budget.
Yes, ma'am.
But even if we have a placeholder in the budget, just, I can't perceive there really being more immediate need than handling the things that are being handled in his office.
So absolutely, Chris and I have already talked about this, and Jimmy has been keeping up with the list of things, so we are prioritizing them. And so as soon as we get the consultant on board, they will be meeting with Dr. Gullidge and some of the others that have risen to the level of concern of this board to bring forward as quickly as possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Does anybody need a break? It's 3 o'clock.
And just for the board's edification, we only have one more today, if I'm not mistaken, so
Okay,
that would be
great.
Ross. So I believe that's the last one.
I don't know, I could
today.
use a good cry after that.
Yes, yes. Come on up.
Is everybody all right?
Yes.
All right.
He needs it.
I'm definitely convinced we went in the wrong order, because I always thought the medical examiner was supposed to be the last person you saw.
Thank you.
That's true. What you don't see won't hurt you. I have handouts, yes. Because you were not supposed to put the organizational chart in your PowerPoint. You are. Well, good afternoon, Chairwoman, County Commissioners, and County Manager. It's my pleasure to be the cleanup hitter for you this afternoon here. I bring greetings from communications from Aqualand, where I'm pleased to report the cleanup is going very well. To the mission statement, really, for communications, it's just really boiled down to one thing, and that is just to communicate with the residents of this county and just to be a conduit of information from you all and our county departments to our residents about what they do, what we do for them, and how we can be of any assistance. And it's been a challenging year for us, as you've heard from others as well, to get that done in a pandemic and do it under some very challenging circumstances. As you know, we've had a couple of people leave communications for greener pastures, and what I thought would be an 8-week process to fill those positions is now stretched into 8 months and 3 postings and does continue, but hopefully we're very close to getting that done. I did want to show the org chart that is in your handout. First of all, I hate to pick on Gwinnett, it seems like we're all picking on Gwinnett, but when it comes to communications departments, everybody in the metro area kind of does it differently. In many parts of Metro Atlanta, TV is separate from content creation, from public information in different counties, but Gwinnett is the one county where their department mirrors ours. They're the second largest county in this metropolitan area. We're number 3. This is their communications department. Again, it's very similar to us. They do have the website in green in their org chart that we don't have, but we otherwise both have the switchboard, content creation, public relations, and television. That's what Gwinnett looks like, and this is what we look like. When I did, and you can see it in the handouts, an apples to apples comparison of our departments, they're about 2.5 times the size that we are. We have 9 full-timers, and they have about 25 doing the same jobs in Gwinnett County. So that takes us back to the PowerPoint where we discuss missed opportunities and opportunities for improvement, which we talk about every single week in our department. It always comes up, things that we wish and we want to do for the citizens of Cobb County, to tell them what we're doing. And it's a long list, and I could spend the rest of the afternoon on just some of those, but we would really like to reach out to people using mailings and the quarterly water bill like we always do. It'd be great if somebody moved into the county and we can hand them a nice pre-produced slick publication of their county government and what we can do for them and how we can work with them. We really need to rebrand this county and update our look and make it uniform across all departments. That's been overdue for a decade. We just simply cannot do it. And that list just goes on and on. We need more tools to engage with people on social media. We need to figure out what they're saying on social media about us. Right now, we're using just really, in the industry-wide standard, just rudimentary tools to do that. And again, I could talk about this list for the next week, for the rest of the afternoon. But we have a lot of needs in communications when it comes to just basic communications with the residents of Cobb County. Here's our budget and kind of what we're asking for. We had a blip up in our personnel budget, but our budget's been really stable over the last decade. There hasn't been much variation at all, and we will be asking for some help on the operational side as well as personnel side moving forward to try to catch up to our neighbors and provide the kind of services that I believe at a minimum level we need to provide for Cobb County residents. It just seems to me that every week here that I'm just keeping my nose above the water level, and I'm not able to go out and do some of these proactive things that I think we'd like to do to let people know what's going on in Cobb County. We're simply reacting to things, and when something big happens involving the media, like Sterigenics or last year's election or losing the All-Star game earlier this year, that our cogs grind to a halt in communications as we deal with larger issues like that. There's a graph on this particular slide that shows that our budgets remain steady. Our staff, the communications department, is much smaller than it was 10 years ago. We lost a position during the recession that was never brought back, and then the web folks went up to IS a couple of years ago, and we are a very small staff now compared to where we were even 10 years ago. Our budgets remain fairly even. As you see, the population, the people that we need to serve has gone way up. So we're going to be asking for 6 new positions in the upcoming budget. 3 really have urgent needs. These are the positions. We really need somebody to come in and take the digital lead in our office. We've seen not too long ago a lot of occasions where the social media world can get ahead of us, and we come out not looking so good, and often for unfair reasons. We really like somebody to step in and take the lead. We do not have the capability now to monitor social media the way we need to be monitoring it, to seeing what people are saying, and to respond appropriately to it. Something happened this weekend. It happened on a Sunday, and I'm getting text messages literally at 2 a.m. in the morning to try to deal with a situation. So we would really like a digital lead, somebody to come in and really take that and to find these new opportunities. I created a TikTok account for Cobb County. Now, what we're going to do with that, I don't know. But that's the hot social media avenue right now. We need to do something on TikTok. I know somebody maybe slightly younger than me should be able to come in and take that over. The next position is also a communications specialist, somebody to do our graphics. How we are a communications department without any graphics person, I have no idea how we've done it for so long. I've done my best, and Aqua and others down there have done their best, but we simply cannot function without a graphics person. The only way we've been functioning is a guy by the name of Craig Ford that many of you people may know, and when there's a big need, when it involves graphics, I go into Craig, and he has a certain talent to be able to put descriptions into an actual product that none of us have as well. And he's been a huge help when it comes to making logos and really high quality flyers and communications things. And the only thing I really dislike about Craig is that he is not in my department. He is in information services, and I've run out of things to bribe him with. Right now that list includes free tacos on Tuesdays and permanent naming rights to the Cobb County meeting room when and if it shall ever be built. So I just don't have anything else left to bribe Craig with, so we really need a graphics person in our department. And then a third position up there would be the senior video producer. This is a position we had in the department more than a decade ago. I think during the recession we lost it. Listen, video is king when it comes to communications these days. We really need to produce more content of a video nature for our residents to consume. This person would allow us to do that much more than we currently are as well. And I've received a lot of requests from some of you and some others on your staff to do upgrades to our broadcasts of meetings that include graphics, and it would be nice during a zoning meeting to be able to look at the screen and see what case we're actually discussing. And when you all vote on something, it would be lovely to see the screen and actually get a visual representation of the vote. But all that takes an additional person. We are at bare minimum now. There's 3 people in Cobb TV. And we are at the bare minimum to be able to broadcast these programs as it is right now. And any upgrade in those broadcasts would require another person to come on board. 3 other positions up there have to do with something we'll be bringing to the board later this year, hopefully a 311 CRM center, the customer relationship management program that we think is really important. We have a switchboard downstairs that answers nearly 60,000 calls a year, manned by 3 part-timers. And it's really an antiquated system. The calls come in, it's almost like they're in the operating room patching one call to another and sending people on the way. We need a way to take the calls about issues in the county in, figure out where they need to go, who needs to address them, get that to the right place, and then be able to track that to make sure that call got to where it needed to be and is being looked at by the appropriate personnel in the county. And a CRM program that we're considering would also allow the person calling in to have a stake in it. They'll be able to go on their computer or their smartphone in the future and check on their call and see where it is in the system. So these 3 staffers would be involved in that. Should the board approve 311, we would like to have it open not only during the current hours of 8 to 5, but expand that at least initially to 2 shifts going forward and increase it in the future. So there is my staffing. Operating wise, we are asking for a significant increase in our operating budget, but our operating budget's barely $100,000 as it is right now. And some of the things we need, the top items on this list, with the exception of professional services, really have to do about bringing these new employees on board. The professional services item there is to bring outside counsel in to assist in our never-ending, ongoing cable TV franchise negotiations. And we have used an outside counsel before, but we've kind of had to pull that money in from different parts of our budget to get that done. We hope if we can add that next year, we can finally end the never-ending negotiations. The big things that, if you look in your handouts, you will see on the last page, the 2 big tools in our tool belt in communications, which would be our printing budget and our advertising budgets, really currently are just a small fraction of what they were 10 years ago. And we would really like to push that back up again. We would like to get an advertising budget where we can actually be more proactive, do things rather than being reactive, get out there and advertise some of the things we're doing, do targeted social media campaigns as well. So we would like to increase the advertising budget and general printing. I mean, good golly, we really have very little printing budget now, and then we get asked to produce all these high-quality products for the ERA program and other things and get them out there. And when we get back to the post-COVID times and have all these events, we would like to be out there with all sorts of printed material to hand out to people. right now, when we have a big request that comes in, quite honestly, we end up using our own equipment, and that taxes our printers and our ink, and the product doesn't look nearly as good as it would be if we had a general printing budget. So we would like to ask for that moving forward as well. Again, all within the goal of being more proactive and being able to communicate with the residents of our county well. And there we go. I got it in on time. Yes, ma'am.
All right. So for that 311 center, I saw that for 3 positions, would one of them be in charge of kind of the call center management? Or is that just, we're self-management?
Yeah, we're still refining exactly how many people we will be asking for when that comes up later this year. That request on that slide was just an ongoing yearly request. We would have somebody who's currently a part-timer in my department. We would move her up to being the supervisor.
Got it.
And then we would like to ideally, fairly soon, have 2 shifts of people answering those calls so we can run it at least 12, if not more, hours a day.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Ross, I just want to thank you for all that you've done to be responsive to the many initiatives across the county to help promote the things that we're doing with the very limited team that you have. So this is a thank you to you, but a thank you to also members of your team. I will berate you and ask you a lot of questions, but I do that every day, so there's no need for me to do that here today, other than I know that we need you to be able to help us do the things that we do, and I look forward to us being able to support you.
Thank you. And I will say for your assistance as well, they've been a tremendous help to us. We need to rely on them and do to learn from y'all what's going on in the county, and it's been a really good relationship.
Thank you. I agree. Just thank you for always being upbeat and positive and having a smile and laugh even through some of the challenges that we do have through some of the shortages in the organization, but that's not to make light of the shortage. There definitely is one, and there's much more we could be doing if you were adequately staffed.
Well, at the end of the day, I close the door, have a good cry, and then go home.
Oh, okay. She
Thank
said
you.
that's why the floor is wet.
Yeah.
Oh, she's good. She's good.
The medical examiner will come off your floor.
We can, it has.
And on that note, it has been a long day. Again, I want to thank you guys for listening to us and the opportunity to share with you just a few of our needs. As you have heard today, just from some of our smaller departments, but very vital departments to what we do, it's heart-wrenching, isn't it, to listen to them and know what they do every single day. So we thank you for that. Just want to give you a forecast on what's coming next. You probably have this in your in the binder that we've given you, but we will make sure that you get the presentations today. But the next one on the 28th will be a big one as well. That will be public services. So you will have about 5 departments presenting all in one day. So with that, if you all have any feedback you would like to share with us with regard to the presentations going forward, I know a lot of the directors are here, and some of our constitutional officers and elected offices may be watching. So if there's anything that you want us to do differently, any information you want us to include that we didn't include, please let me know, and I will be a point of contact to make sure that we get that in the presentations coming forward. Bill, anything else you want to say? Okay. All right.
Thank you. Great job today. Thank you.